There are certain laws that if we remember, if we embody, if we understand, they're the basis for all creation as we know. So let's speak about the matrix for a second. The matrix being this physical matrix, this physical world that we experience with a beginning and an end and a birth and a death and all those things that have some form of limitation to it. I hear a lot of people always say, the matrix is bad, we want to leave the matrix, we want to end the matrix, all these things, it's like it's an enemy. How can you say that the thing that you're living and that you're experiencing your life through is an enemy? The only reason why it would be an enemy is because we just don't know how to use it. The goal is, how do we become a master of the matrix instead of a slave to the matrix? Your seed that you plant is your thought. Your word that you speak is your water. And your action of bringing that into actual physicality is the plant that comes out of that seed to reach the exact destination that you want to reach. It's in our power. This doesn't exist to hurt you. This exists to have you become the master of it instead of a slave to it. Becoming a master of the matrix. You don't have to be some monk that's 150 years old meditating for 70 years of your life to figure this out. This knowledge, this awareness is accessible to us all because it's where we come from. It's where we come from. There are stories, there are narratives that tell us that we need to do this for 50 years to figure this out, and that may be true to an extent, but it's not true in its essence. Because there are certain laws that if we remember, if we embody, if we understand, they're the basis for all creation as we know. So let's speak about the matrix for a second. The matrix being this physical matrix, this physical world that we experience with a beginning and an end and a birth and a death and all those things that have some form of limitation to it, perceived limitation at least. I hear a lot of people always say, the matrix is bad, we want to leave the matrix, we want to end the matrix, we want to, all these things, it's like it's an enemy. And how can you say that the thing that you're living and that you're experiencing your life through is an enemy? So I thought about that for a second, and I said, the only reason why it would be an enemy is because we just don't know how to use it. But if we exist within it, if we experience the majority of our lives, with exceptions, within this matrix, then there must be a very good reason to it. Remember when doctors told us that there's no need for an appendix? What do you mean? But your body has it. They said that, no, we evolved out of it. No, if your body has it, you need it. Okay? That's how nature works. It doesn't do things, just because. It doesn't do things by mistake. It does things with a purpose because there is order to absolutely everything. This doesn't exist to hurt you. This exists to have you become the master of it instead of a slave to it. So right now in the matrix, in this physical world, we see these physical limitations that we have. We can't do X, we could do Y, we could only do a little bit of this. When you get older, you get much weaker. All these things that are based on perceptions and limitations that also impact the matrix. And anytime there's somebody in the world, for the most part, that speaks about a more expansive version of the world that pretty much defies the limitations of this matrix. They call them a quack, they call them crazy, they call them some form of mentally ill person. I've been called all those things. That's why I know. So with this, the goal is, how do we become a master of the matrix instead of a slave to the matrix, instead of a servant to the matrix? The best example I can give is electricity. Before we knew how to control electricity, before we understood the laws of electricity, we were pretty much at the mercy of lightning. It would happen whenever it happens, and we didn't know how to harness that energy. But today we have something called electricians. Electricians know the law of electricity to a point where they can take a few wires, hit it up on a wall with a switch, flip a switch, and turn the lights on. That's called mastering electricity. We used to be servants to it because we didn't know how to control it. We didn't know how to move it. We didn't know how to manipulate it. And I do that with manipulation because generally people hear that in a negative way. Manipulate is just move things in your own way. If you're doing it in a negative way, that's a whole different story, but that's not what we're talking about here. The manipulation of electricity is what we've mastered to now power an entire planet on that. So knowing that, we got to ask ourselves, well, if all is energy in its essence, and if we understand the laws of energy, then we can be the equivalent of electricians with light bulbs to masters of creation as we know it, to masters of existence as we know it. And it's not as hard as you may think. Electricians need to read a lot of books, study a lot of currents, understand how all these things work, but there's a base to how this whole thing works when it comes to this language of the matrix. This language of energy, understanding how energy works, and it's broken up into very, very simple laws. Number one is called the law of conservation. The law of conservation, as I think we all know, is energy cannot be created or destroyed. Fact. Not opinion, not theory, fact. Energy cannot be created or destroyed. What that really means is if I take this piece of paper, there's an energy to it, and there's a form to it. Something created this paper. If I were to take a lighter and light it on fire, the paper would so-called disappear. Did the energy just die? No. The energy of this paper turned into heat. It turned into a different molecular formation in gas and smoke, and that goes up into the atmosphere and recycles itself. Because that's how the universe works. Energy cannot be created or destroyed. The implications of that simple law are your very proof of everything that the physical world calls quackery in the spiritual world. It's science. Reincarnation is an implication of that. Infinity, and tapping into infinity is that. Free energy, why Nikola Tesla was murdered, and so many other people in this world that came up with those products and came up with those technologies, is because of that. Because if energy cannot be created or destroyed, there must be a way to tap into that infinite field. Because the implication of that is there is something infinite here with no beginning or no end. The ego doesn't like that, which we'll speak about, because the ego likes knowing things. It likes creating limitations to things so we can understand it. You can't understand infinity. You can't know where it starts and where it ends. That's why the scientific community pretty much throws away the quantum physics world. Now they don't have a choice. We're going into that. But it's because they couldn't understand that. I mean, look at the evolution of the ego with science. It started, time is absolute. That's a concrete thing. The ego loves it. Albert Einstein came out and said time is relative. Everybody got pissed off. Because they said, what do you mean? No, it's not how it works. My point over here is the law of conservation is the foundational law, one of them, that teach us that energy cannot be created or destroyed and all is infinite, which means all realities exist in this present moment. That's knowingness number one. Law number two is the law of vibration. You experience what you're in resonance with. This is how walkie-talkies work. This is how radios work. There's radio stations being hosted on different frequencies. That's what AM and FM is. You have your opera channel, your country channel, your rap channel, your, whatever, all these channels out there. And it's up to us to tune to the channels that already exist. If you visualize what I just said, that's these two laws in motion. Energy cannot be created or destroyed, and the law of vibration, you experience what you're in resonance with. What that really means is there is an infinite amount of potential realities right here, right now, right in front of us in this present moment. And you have the ability to change your frequency, to change your vibration, to tune to whichever one you want. That's what these two laws really tell you. The law of oneness brings us to a point of understanding that if all is light, as I've already said, all is one. We experience division We experience separation, not because that's really what's going on, but because that's our physical experience. But there's an illusion within the matrix, and if we believe the illusion, you're not a master of it. Almost like if there's a magician standing in front of you and he pulls a rabbit out of the hat, if you miss the point that that's an illusion, your experience is going to be very different. You're going to give a lot of power to that magician. You're going to be like, wow, look what you just did, that's magic. But when you understand that, wow, you just did a really cool card trick, but I understand that there's a mechanism to that trick, suddenly you become a master of that, because you're not believing in the illusion of what you just saw. Things can be deceiving sometimes. Things are illusory sometimes. We experience, with the law of conservation, before we know that, the beginning and end. We experience the birth and death. We experience yesterday, today, and tomorrow in the matrix. But you become aware of that, your world and your perception changes. You look at the magician, you don't say, wow, that's magic. You say, awesome, how'd you do it? I want to learn, because there's a mechanism there. And then you can start doing the magic. Master versus slave to the matrix. Back to the law of oneness. We are all one. If we are all one, and nothing is actually separate from you, well, that explains, just for the surface, telekinesis. What's telekinesis? The ability to move something without touching it. When you're a slave to the matrix, you believe the sentence that I just said. The ability to move something without touching it. Because you think that this marker is separate from my hand. But if you're aware that there's a unified field that connects this marker in my hand, then suddenly that newfound awareness will mean that I can move this marker without touching it, if I learn how to, of course. And it's because I'm touching the marker in a different realm, in a different dimension. Because this marker exists in as this marker within the confines of our perceived reality. In the matrix, you want to become a master of it. You have to understand how the matrix works and how everything outside of the matrix works as well. And once you understand that, which are these laws, this is the laws of the matrix and outside of the matrix, you will understand that telekinesis is not some supernatural ability. It's something that we can all do if we remember and we come back to that. That's something that there are people that are doing all around the world today. And more and more and more of them are being able to do it. There are videos all over the internet. You could say that they're fake. But this is law. When you understand that you're not separate from that thing, you can move it because you're touching it. You just need to find how to touch it in the unified field where both your hand and this marker exists. This law will dissolve war. Because right now, again, you would never take a hammer and break your own leg. Because you see it as your leg. Because you see it as a piece of you. But if all is one, and there's a unified field, then why aren't we helping the starving children in Africa? Why aren't we stopping the genocides that happen in multiple countries simultaneously around this planet? Simply because it doesn't impact our country. It's happening right now. It's been happening for a very long time. And because we're not living according to the law of oneness, we turn a blind eye. Because we really believe that we're not one with the child 12,000 miles away on the other side of this planet, but we are. Imagine, just like you have billions of people on this planet, you have billions and trillions of cells in your body. Imagine that the cell in your foot didn't want to work with the cell in your liver, that didn't want to work with the cell in your heart, that didn't want to work with the cell in your brain. You would live in a toxic body. You would manifest something called dis-ease, and eventually you would die. And because we forget these things, because we look around us, and we think that, you know, the darker skin color is different than the black is different than the white, and the Asian is different than the Jew. All these things have caused us, through the forgetfulness of these laws, to experience war, to experience greed, to experience corruption. But it's just like the body. The heart looks different than the liver. The liver looks different than the kidney. The kidney looks different than the spleen, and they all speak different languages in their base. They all have different operations, they all have different purposes, but they all work together as one to create what we call health. Within the word humanity, you actually have the word unity. If you take out the H, the M, and the A, you have the word unity. If we don't work in that way, we become slaves to this matrix, believing in the division, believing in the separation, believing that my God is better than your God. That sentence doesn't make sense when you understand these laws. To become a master of the matrix doesn't just mean you could do things like levitation or telekinesis. That's not what I'm talking about. To become a master of the matrix is to understand the laws by which the matrix works, the laws by which the universe beyond the limited perception of the matrix works, and thus rendering a world that we can live in without hate, without division, without all these things, but with the exact opposite, with love, with unity, with compassion, with forgiveness, with coming together. All of these things are how the universe works. It's who we are. But we've become servants to our illusion of the perception, the perceptions, the illusions of our perceptions, because we've believed them. We've believed for so long the magician is really doing magic. And even what we call magic is simply what we don't understand. What is levitation, if you really think about it? When you simplify it, it's, ooh, this person can fly. But what it really is just the manipulation of a force that we call gravity. That's all it is. If you can manipulate the force that we call gravity, the next thing that happens is you experience things like levitation. But that's not why we're here today. Why we're here today is to understand how to become that master. So we're going to go to the last law, which is balance and harmony. And there are more laws in this, but these are foundational ones that I like touching on. Balance and harmony. There is nothing that is out of balance in this world. Even the most severe diseases, the most severe ailments, the most severe hardships in your life, some will call that an imbalance for practical purposes. Like we said when we defined health, we said dis-ease is an imbalance, and ease, balance, is health. And that's true on one level. But on the foundational level, if you're going to the spiritual truths over here, your imbalance is your gift. Because within the balance of law, within the law of balance and harmony, within every hardship exists the exact opposite, a gift to keep moving forward. Within every failure exists a seed of success. Within every end exists a beginning. Within every birth exists every death, and within every death exists a birth. It's all the same thing, with different terminology that we've identified according to our limited perception of giving labels to things. Because we're still living in here. And it's okay to live in the matrix, we all do. But do you believe it to be true, or do you see beyond its illusions? So to recap, energy cannot be created or destroyed. All realities exist right here, right now. The law of vibration, you experience what you're in resonance with. Bringing these two together allows you to experience whatever reality you desire, because you already have access to it. The question is, what are you consciously or unconsciously choosing to tune to? From there, everything is one. If everything is one, and you start living your life through that awareness, through that consciousness, then anywhere from the supernatural to the normal will change. Telekinesis becomes something that's not supernatural and doesn't make sense. You can suddenly make sense of it. Same thing with levitation. Instantaneous healing is also something that becomes like that. Instantaneous, right there. It's not impossible, and it's not a miracle. A miracle is another word for something we don't understand. Because another law over here within the matrix is the law of cause, sorry for my handwriting, and effect. And cause and effect ties directly into balance and harmony. Cause and effect is, if you experience something, it didn't happen by chance, it didn't happen by coincidence, it happened by divine order. Now you could sit there and just wait for divine order to play out in its way without your conscious awareness of intervening. Or you can learn how to produce a desired cause in order to produce a desired effect. That's how nature works. You have a cucumber seed, you have a tomato seed. You plant that thing, it's not going to produce an apple tree. It never will. It never will. What it will do is produce a tomato plant, and if you don't know what you're doing, it just won't produce at all. But it's not going to produce an apple tree. Why? Because nature is perfect, and we're a part of nature. So just like the seed produces a specific plant every time, your seed is your thought. And your thought is where that manifestation, that access begins. And from your thought, which is your cause, you bring it to the bridge between thought and action, thought and matter, which is your word. Your word is watering your cause, watering your seed. And as you water the seed, and you've already produced it in a conscious way through your thought, the next thing that comes out is the exact plant that you wanted. And if nature can do it, so can you. Because you are a part of nature. When the sperm and the egg came together, it always produces a human being. We look different, we behave different. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the principle over here, not the nuances. And the principle is very important. You have a seed of your thought. And to recap, which is what mastery is really all about. Mastery of the matrix is not just understanding these, in this case, 5 laws. And there are more. But it's about understanding how to move from the less dense to the most dense. From the thought to the word to the matter. And to paint that picture one more time very clearly, your seed that you plant is your thought. Your word that you speak is your water. And your action of bringing that into actual physicality is the plant that comes out of that seed. And if you can do that in an aligned way, over and over and over again, it may take you trial and error, but keep going. It will become second nature to you. The way that you live will just be a conscious manifester. An artist that's not just throwing paint on the wall, but painting to reach the exact destination that you want to reach. It's in our power. We just need to understand these laws and understand how to use them. So the purpose of this was to plant these seeds, the law of conservation, the law of vibration, the law of oneness, the law of balance, and the law of cause and effect. And to further that into explaining how to bring non-physical energy into physical matter. Practice that, work on that. Don't just hear what I just said here today, but make it your own. I'm just me. You guys are you. Mix the two together, we have your own unique creation. My job is to plant the seed. Your job is to water it and to flourish into your own unique plant. That's the difference between a servant to the matrix, just doing it without any form of calculation or awareness, and a master of the matrix, which is somebody that sits there and understands these things and then acts consciously from the level of thought to the level of word, to the level of action. That's a recap, big picture, of steps in the beginning of becoming a master of the matrix. What's up, everybody? If you enjoyed that first episode of Truth Bombs, there's a whole series of that's now dropping on Unified TV exclusively. The good news is the first 3 episodes are already out. So this one, which you already saw, all about becoming a master of the matrix. The second episode that's out right now for all members on Unified TV is called From Victimhood into Creatorship, moving and dissolving from the illusion of victimhood into becoming a conscious creator, and exactly how to do that and what steps you can take to make that happen right here, right now. And the third episode that's out right now exclusively for all Unified TV members is called The Ego is a Good Thing if used correctly. And it shows you how to actually make the ego your best friend instead of being a slave to it. So make sure to check it out. If you did like this first episode, the other 2 episodes are out right now on Unified TV exclusively for all members. And every single week, once a week, a new episode of Truth Bombs is going to be coming out for all members on Unified TV. If you have not yet downloaded the app, make sure to do so. There are links in the description below this video to do just that. And thank you all for supporting this mission. I love you all, and I look forward to sharing the entire series of Truth Bombs with all of you. Thank you very much.